Chapter 3249. Big Brother, these guys are obviously here to mess things up. Lu Jiangang frowned. He did not expect Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to be so despicable. They were just bidding for an incomplete map, yet they wanted to mess things up like this. Gue Jun's face darkened. If they deliberately mess things up, I'm afraid it won't be so easy for us to get this incomplete map. I'm afraid the price will be much higher than what we're paying now. There's no other way. I'm determined to get this incomplete map. Gao Hanchuan's eyes were filled with a fierce and determined light. If he did not have the other incomplete map, it would be fine. Now that the other incomplete map had appeared, how could he let go of this opportunity? Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun obviously knew Gao Hanchuan's thoughts about this incomplete map. There were a total of 4 incomplete maps. Gao Hanchun was already extremely lucky to have encountered 2 of them. If he missed it, no one would be willing to do so. However, based on the current situation, they were afraid that they would have to pay a higher price to get this incomplete map back. Big Brother, I believe that they are deliberately using this opportunity to mess with us. Even if they win the bid for the map fragment, it will be useless. Although the price may be higher, it will still fall into our hands in the end, Gue Jun said thoughtfully. Hearing Gue Jun's words, Gao Hanchun also nodded. His thoughts were the same as Gue Jun's. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had just arrived at Penglai Island not long ago. He did not believe that the other party would be rich enough to spend a sum of spirit stones to buy a useless map back. 35,000 spirit stones. Gao Hanchun said again. He wanted to see how much Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could bid. After seeing that Gao Hanchun continued to compete with the cultivators in the private room, a look of surprise appeared in the eyes of the cultivators in the ordinary seats. 50,000 spirit stones. Di Beichen said without hesitation. They had to get this incomplete map. Instead of slowly raising the price like this, it was better to raise the price directly to let the other party know that they were determined to get it. Seeing that the voice from the private room had begun to raise the price by a large margin, a look of understanding appeared in the eyes of the cultivators present. As long as they bid with the cultivators in the private room, the result would often be like this. Even if the cultivators in the ordinary seats were rich, they could not be compared with the cultivators in the private room. You may think that you have spent a lot of money, but for the cultivators in the private room, it was just a drop in the ocean. 55,000 spirit stones. Gao Hanchun clenched his teeth and said. If it was with his original wealth, taking out these spirit stones would be nothing, but unfortunately, the heaven-shaking faction had encountered a great change. He had taken out all his money to save the heaven-shaking faction, so his wealth had been greatly reduced and could not be compared to before. This, T. After Di Beichen and the others saw that Gao Hanchun was so obsessed with the map, the light in their eyes gradually became complicated, too. Chapter 3250. Hearing Xiren's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. In fact, it wasn't just Wen Xiren who had this idea, they had the same idea. If they were interested, it was still possible to buy the map fragment at a low price. But if they spent too much money, it wouldn't be worth it. What's more, according to their understanding of the situation, the Xintian faction was in a very bad situation. Gao Hanchun and the others obviously didn't have any spare money, so this move was very interesting. If the 4th map fragment is really in Gao Hanchuan's hands, then we can put the 4 map fragments together, right? Shangguan Yingying's eyes lit up. Originally, they were thinking about how to find the 4th map fragment, but now it appeared directly in front of them. If that's the case, doesn't that mean I was right? A smile appeared on Wen Xiren's face. He had previously said that it would be easy for them to obtain the 4th map fragment and that it would soon appear in front of them. He didn't expect that not long after he said this, the 4th map fragment might really appear. This was too much of a coincidence. In this regard, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were speechless. They really didn't expect Xiren's whimsical words to become reality. However, if this was true, then it was really good news. Originally, we didn't want to make a move on Gao Hanchun and the others so early. Now that the situation has become like this, it seems that we have to make a move on them early. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said. Just for this possibility, they had to check Gao Hanchun and the others' Qinkuan bags. 70,000 spiritual stones. Di Beichen said again, but his eyes were fixed on the ordinary seats. He could feel that Gao Hanchun had hesitated when he called out the price of 55,000 spiritual stones. Obviously, he didn't have much money on him. He raised the price of 70,000 spiritual stones to test how much Gao Hanchun valued this map fragment. If Gao Hanchun could bid again, then the possibility of the fourth map fragment being in Gao Hanchun's possession would be extremely high. Facing the price of 70,000 spirit stones, Gao Hanchun's eyes were bloodshot. This damned Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were forcing him into a dead end. He only had a total of 100,000 spirit stones on him. He still had to continue living in the future. Now that he no longer had the income from the heaven-shaking faction, the possibility of him joining the Crimson Moon sect was greatly reduced. He was prepared to keep some spirit stones for future use. If he had to hand over all his wealth because of this incomplete map, it would undoubtedly be extremely disadvantageous to him. However, he didn't want to give up on the map fragment just like that. After everyone saw that Gao Hanchun had fallen into silence, a mocking expression appeared on their faces. It's just a fragment of a map. Why is this guy trying so hard? No matter how hard he tries, it's useless. From the looks of it, he's already at the end of his rope. I'm afraid he's already reached the bottom line of the price he can afford. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have competed in the beginning. Now that he's offended the cultivators in the private room, isn't he just asking for trouble? The crowd shook their heads and sighed. Such a move was simply too unwise. Chapter 32:51. Once upon a time, no matter where he went, he was the center of everyone's attention. Even the cultivators from the three major forces didn't dare to laugh at him. After all, it was better to be the head of a chicken than the tail of a phoenix. Even if the Heaven-Shaking Association couldn't be compared to the three major forces, as the association leader, his status was still much higher than the ordinary cultivators from the three major forces. However, he just wanted to buy an incomplete map, yet he was ridiculed for overestimating himself. How ironic was this? Thinking of this, Gao Hanchun couldn't help but call out again, 80,000 spirit stones. However, when he called out this price, Gao Hanchun was already filled with anger. These four damned bastards, step by step, they were pushing him into a corner. One day, he would tear these four bastards into pieces. Seeing Gao Hanchun bid again, Di Beichen's deep and wise eyes flashed with a faint light, but the corners of his lips slowly rose into a smile. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Di Beichen's expression and couldn't help but ask, "You don't plan to continue bidding? Since there will be a battle between us sooner or later, what difference does it make whether we buy it or they buy it?" Di Beichen's lips curled into a faint smile. Whether they win or Gao Hanchun wins in the end, these four incomplete map pieces will definitely be pieced together. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, "Indeed, but I'm afraid our plan will have to be brought forward. With Gao Hanchun's speed of offending people, I'm afraid we don't know when he will lose his life. We can't let this map piece fall into the hands of others." Xiren moved closer to Di Beichen and said, "In that case, you all agree with me. The fourth map piece is in Gao Hanchun's hands." Most likely, Di Beichen nodded. If not, Gao Hanchun wouldn't be so desperate for this map piece. Suddenly, the smile in everyone's eyes deepened. They didn't expect that they would really be able to complete the map piece. Their luck was really extraordinary. In that case, will Gao Hanchun and the others know that we have the map piece? Sheng Guaningying couldn't help but ask. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment and shook her head. Her lips curled into a faint smile. In my opinion, Gao Hanchun probably thinks that we are deliberately messing with them, so he raised the price. After all, we didn't bid first, but waited for them to bid. Speaking of which, Gao Hanchun had actually taken advantage of them by bidding a little later. Otherwise, Gao Hanchun would be the one who knew what was going on. That's great. Wen Xiren's eyes shone with joy. Once we put these 4 pieces of the map together, we will know what kind of secret lies behind it. It's too early to talk about this. Even if we want to deal with Gao Hanchun and the others, we have to think about it carefully and come up with a foolproof plan. Otherwise, if we are careless and lose our lives, that would be terrible. Di Beichen smiled. After Gao Hanchun called out the price of 80,000 spiritual stones, his gaze lingered on the private room on the 2nd floor. He wanted to see if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would continue. However, he knew very well that if the other party continued to raise the price, he would have to give up on this path. Chapter 3252. Just when everyone thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others would continue to bid, there was no news from them at all. Regarding this, everyone was also shocked. Their minds were somewhat unable to react. Logically speaking, such a price was nothing to the cultivators in the private room. Similarly, after Gao Hanchun and the others saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had stopped bidding, they were even more certain that these guys were deliberately making them pay more spirit stones. Enya was also a little surprised by this scene, but she was very grateful to the cultivators in the private room. If it weren't for them, it would be difficult for this map fragment to be auctioned at such a price. 80,000 spirit stones, according to the value of this map fragment, was already considered a very good price. In the end, the map fragment fell into Gao Hanchun's hands, but Gao Hanchun, who got this map fragment, did not feel the slightest joy, only a kind of humiliation. After Manager Jean arranged all kinds of things for the auction, he came to Di Lao's room. He felt that it was necessary to report what had just happened to Di Lao. Di Lao, I just saw Di Bei and Di Chen in the auction hall. What surprised me was that the young master actually knew them and claimed to be good friends with Di Chen. Manager Jean said while sizing up Di Lao. According to his understanding, the young master was usually not in Penglai Island. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them to know each other. If Di Chen was really a good friend of the young master, then their plan could not be used against Di Chen. Listening to Manager Jin's words, Di Lao's face could not help but show a touch of surprise. They are friends. Manager Jin nodded. This is what the young master said personally. Not only that, the young master also let me arrange for them to enter the private room to participate in the auction. Di Lao was silent for a moment, the look in his eyes constantly changed. Could it be that this was fate? He was very clear about his young master's personality. Ordinary people could not enter the young master's eyes at all. Even Di Chen, he was just a very ordinary cultivator. He did not even have the opportunity to see the young master. Now, he could actually become friends with the young master. How could this not surprise him? I already know about this matter. You go and pay attention to the auction, especially the auction of the Tears of Cold Flame. After the auction is over, come and report to me. Yes. Manager Jean retreated, but the doubts in his heart became more and more intense. He faintly felt that Di Lao had other purposes for looking for Di Chen and the others, but he was simply unwilling to tell him. Not long after Manager Jean left, Elder Emperor also arrived before Di Yujue. Young Lord. Elder Di bowed respectfully. Di Yujue turned around and glanced at Di Lao. He nodded and said, "Sit." Young master, I heard that you've become friends with a young man. Elder Di asked. The corners of Di Yujue's lips curled up slightly, and a smile appeared in his eyes. I didn't expect you to be so well informed. You already know about it so quickly. To be honest, young master, the person I was talking about is him. His surname is also D. Elder D said slowly, he is a cultivator from the outside world who came to Penglai Island not long ago. I think this is very coincidental. Chapter 3253. Old Emperor nodded, that's right. Half a year ago, when they first came to Penglai Island, I was the one who received them, so I know the situation very well. If that's the case, then I'm not just fated to meet him. Yujue chuckled, no wonder I had a special feeling when I first saw him. Young master, do you think he is? Old Emperor asked tentatively. He and Di Baichen had only met once, but he felt that this young man gave him a very good impression. Yujue immediately understood Old Emperor's meaning and shook his head, although I feel that I'm fated to meet him, you and I both know that with the standard of the Xingxian continent's doctors, it's impossible for them to discover the cursed body, let alone cure him. This Di Baichen is young, but his cultivation is very outstanding. According to my judgment, he should be around 23 or 24 years old. With our family's situation, if he can't solve the problem of his physique at this age, it's impossible for him to cultivate to the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Hearing Di Yujue's words, Old Emperor couldn't help but sigh. In fact, he also felt that it was impossible, but since it was such a coincidence, maybe there really was a glimmer of hope. In the end, this was still his wishful thinking. What's more, now that we've collected all the Purple Dragon Emperor Ginseng and Frosty Tears in the entire Xingxian continent, there's no way he can be cured. How can he be like Di Baichen? At this point, Di Yujue's face couldn't help but show a touch of pain. If we still can't find him, I'm afraid he'll really be in danger. As the time approached, the atmosphere in their family became more and more tense. Now, he couldn't even return to the family. As long as he returned to the family, he would definitely face the family master's curses and his wife's resentment. He really regretted it, but unfortunately, he couldn't find any news after searching for so long. It wasn't that he didn't want to go back to the family and face all of this, but his heart was already uncomfortable enough. Facing his family, the guilt in his heart was even stronger. Yes, it was all his fault. Otherwise, my family would not have been unable to be happy for so many years. Looking at Di Yujue's expression, Elder Di instinctively wanted to comfort him, but unfortunately, he swallowed his words. At this point, no amount of consolation would be of any use. I'm preparing to make a trip to the outside world. Even if there's only a sliver of hope, I can't let it go. Di Yujue's gaze became resolute. However, I recently received some news. A very reliable piece of news has appeared in the outside world. I have to personally confirm it. Old Emperor nodded. I hope it's good news this time. Little young master, we really hope to find you soon. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 sat in the private room and watched the items being auctioned off one by one. They didn't have much interest in the items and were only waiting for the Tears of Frigid Heat to be sold. However, the later the auction went on, the higher the price of the item became. When the Tears of Frigid Heat was about to be auctioned, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but worry that they wouldn't be able to obtain it with their current wealth. Next up is the 35th item, Tears of Frigid Flame. Chapter 3254. For a moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were all in high spirits, and their gazes immediately focused on the auction stage. The Tears of Frosty Flame is an extremely precious medicinal herb. Its growth requirements are extremely harsh, and it takes hundreds of years to grow. As long as one has some understanding of medicine, they should know its value. Enya's face had a faint smile as she introduced the effects of the Tears of Frosty Flame to everyone. Among the cultivators present, it was obvious that most of them were unfamiliar with the Tears of Frosty Flame. In fact, every time a medicinal herb was auctioned, it could be sold at a very good price. The premise was that the medicinal herb could help a cultivator increase their strength. Everyone was completely focused on the Tears of Frosty Flame. It was a crystal blue fruit that was blooming with an alluring luster. It was extremely attractive. However, after listening for a long time, the crowd did not hear that the tears of frosty flame would help a cultivator's cultivation. Immediately, the anticipation in their eyes faded by a lot. No matter how precious this medicinal herb was, it was meaningless if it did not increase one's cultivation. Tears of frosty flame, starting price, 100,000 spirit stones. As Inya's voice fell, the eyes of all the cultivators present flashed with deep surprise. They were not interested in this medicinal herb, but the starting price of this medicinal herb was actually so high. It was truly beyond their expectations. This also proved that the Golden Flame Auction House's price for this medicinal herb was very high. 105,000 spirit stones. Very quickly, the first bid rang out. 110,000 spirit stones. In the private room, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had been staring at the situation below. Their plan was the same as before, to wait for the ordinary cultivators to bid a certain price before making a move. If they made a move too early, it would expose their eagerness for the tears of frosty flame. Furthermore, they still had to see Steward Qin's plan. Looking at the situation, most cultivators are not interested in the tears of frosty flame. Xiren was a little relieved. The competition for the previous auction items was not ordinary. Almost every time a bid sounded out, it was immediately covered by another voice. Therefore, he had always been a little worried that the tears of frosty flame would be auctioned off in the same situation. Fortunately, based on the current situation, the tears of frosty flame obviously did not have such a craze. 150,000 spiritual stones. After a cultivator from the ordinary seats raised the price to 150,000, the voices calling out bids gradually died down. It was clear that no one was too interested in the tears of frosty flame. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. It was time to make a move. Manager Jin's gaze had been fixed on the box where Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four were. He wanted to confirm whether or not Bailey Hongzhuang's group of four had come to the auction for the tears of frosty flame. At the very least, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had never bid for anything other than the incomplete map. However, Steward Jin also thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were only bidding for the map fragments to prank Gao Hanchun and the other two. Their real purpose had not been revealed yet. However, just as Steward Jin thought that it was time for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three to make a move, a bidding voice suddenly rang out from the box. 200,000 spiritual stones. Chapter 3255. 200,000 spirit stones. This price was not something that had not been reached in previous auctions. On the contrary, many auction items had been sold for more than 200,000 spirit stones. What shocked everyone was not the price, but the speed at which the other party increased the price. In one breath, he had increased the price by 50,000 spirit stones. This was really a big deal. It was obvious that the other party was determined to get the tears of glacial flame. Moreover, the voice came from the private room. The aura that it revealed was extremely impressive. The cultivator in the ordinary seats who had bid 150,000 spirit stones was obviously shocked by the sudden bid from the private room. For a moment, he did not know if he should continue to bid or give up. 250,000 spirit stones. After thinking for a moment, the cultivator still made a tentative bid. This price was not beyond the range of what he could afford. Moreover, it was a little too cowardly to admit defeat just because of one sentence from the other party. However, just as the cultivator made his bid, the voice in the private room rang out again. 250,000 spirit stones. Compared to this cultivator's lack of confidence in probing, the voices in the private room were like a violent storm that pressed down on his body, not giving him any room to breathe at all. The other party directly used this method to tell him that it was impossible to fight with him. The cultivator hesitated for a moment and put down his hand that was about to raise the paddle. The other party was rich and overbearing. There was no point in continuing the competition. If he offended the other party because of this, it would be very troublesome. I don't know who is sitting in the private room. This bid is really domineering. Every time he raises the price by 50,000 spirit stones, he doesn't seem to care at all. This is the true definition of rich and overbearing. To us, 50,000 spirit stones is an incredible price. To this kind of person, I'm afraid it's just a game. He doesn't care at all. The people present were all shrewd people. Just from the nonchalant voice in the private room, they could tell that the other party really did not care and was not pretending. This fake aura was completely different from the real aura. Everyone immediately began to guess the true identity of the cultivator in the box. However, everyone was unfamiliar with the voice and could not determine who it was. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, who were about to bid, looked at each other after hearing this voice. Looking at the situation, they didn't need to bid for the time being. Steward Qin's offer is really domineering. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyebrows and a faint smile appeared in her eyes. He was using his power to oppress others, forcing the other party to not dare to compete with him. Obviously, Steward Qin was also a veteran of auctions, so he understood this situation very well. She could tell that the other party definitely did not have the ability to continue bidding, but was shocked by Steward Qin's aura, so he had no choice but to give up. If one could possess such an aura, they would be able to intimidate many people during the auction. However, without sufficient foundation, ordinary people would not be able to feign such an aura. Chapter 3256. I didn't see Steward Qin before, so I thought he didn't come. I didn't expect him to be in the box next to us. A hint of surprise appeared in Xiao Hei's eyes. Previously, when he was waiting in the auction hall, he had been looking for Steward Qin's figure. However, even after looking through everyone in the auction hall, he still did not see Steward Qin's figure. He never thought that Steward Qin would actually be in the box next to them. Di Beichen smiled faintly. With Steward Qin's identity, he must have taken the VIP passage of the Golden Flame auction house. There's no need for him to wait outside like us. So that's how it is. Xiao Hei suddenly realized, this Golden Flame auction house is really thorough. The difference in treatment between the rich and the poor. Steward Qin naturally determined the owner of this voice and couldn't help but feel helpless in his heart. He had already expected that Steward Qin would be extremely angry after finding out that he had used the tears of frigid flame as an auction item. He even thought that the next time he saw Steward Qin would definitely treat him coldly. However, he didn't expect Steward Qin to actually go to such an extent and come to bid for the tears of frigid flame himself. This surprised Steward Qin, but at the same time, it also made him secretly sigh that Steward Qin really cared about this business. If it was a normal situation, Steward Qin wouldn't go through so much trouble. After thinking about it carefully, Steward Qin immediately understood. He and Steward Qin had known each other for so long, so he understood the latter's temper very well. He was afraid that the latter had treated this matter as a provocation to his dignity, which was why he had done such a thing. Steward Qin faintly sighed. He didn't want to do this on purpose, but he couldn't disobey the emperor's orders. He could only swallow this grievance himself. No matter how much Steward Qin resented him, he could only endure it. After Steward Qin made his bid, there were also sounds of bidding from the other boxes. However, without exception, they were all directly suppressed by Steward Qin with a higher price. This also allowed everyone to truly see Steward Qin's rich and imposing side. These spirit stones seemed to be just a number to him, and he didn't feel the slightest bit of heartache when he said it. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were also dumbfounded at this scene. They suddenly felt that they didn't need to come to this auction. If Steward Qin was unable to take down the tears of cold flame, then it would be impossible for them to take it down. After seeing Steward Qin's fierce bid, Yin Ye's expression became a little strange. Logically speaking, as an auctioneer, being able to sell this item at a high price was the most desirable thing to see. However, for some reason, she felt that the other party had revealed a certain conviction when bidding and a trace of dissatisfaction with their auction house. Although this trace of dissatisfaction was very faint, Yin still felt that her judgment was not wrong. Therefore, under such circumstances, Yin was somewhat frightened. Manager Jin had been waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three to bid, so that he could complete the task given to him by the emperor. However, after being disturbed by Steward Qin, he was completely helpless. This was because he did not see any movement coming from the box where Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were. Chapter 32:57. Manager Jin could not help but scratch his head. He really hoped that Steward Qin would not come out to stir up trouble at this time. If he could not complete the task given by the emperor, it would be a big problem for him. However, it was obvious that Steward Qin would not hear the prayers in Manager Jin's heart. This time, he had come with the determination to obtain it. It was absolutely impossible for Manager Jin to use this matter to cut him off and even slap his face. He wanted Manager Jin to understand that it was not an easy task to plot against him behind his back. In the blink of an eye, the auction price of the Tears of Cold Flame had reached 500,000 spirit stones. Everyone present could only sigh in amazement at this price. It was just a medicinal ingredient, and it was a medicinal ingredient that did not help a cultivator's cultivation at all. Yet, it was auctioned at such a sky-high price. What else could they say? This was completely a game between the rich. Other than taking a look, they did not have the qualifications to participate in the game at all. After Steward Qin raised the price to 500,000 spirit stones, the other boxes also stopped bidding. It was just a stalk of medicinal herb. Paying such a price was really a little crazy. Mo Xingyu was one of the few people who knew of Steward Qin's identity. However, after seeing Steward Qin's crazy actions, he could not help but be dumbfounded. What's wrong with Steward Qin? As far as I know, he was the one who sold the Tears of Cold Flame to the Golden Flame auction house. Why is he buying it back now? Mo Xingyu frowned. The price was too shocking. He felt that this matter was not so simple. I don't know. This is too abnormal. Although the Tears of Cold Flame are precious, they don't have much use. Steward Qin is not an alchemist, so it's meaningless for him to buy this thing back. However, these are nothing. What surprised me the most was that Steward Qin actually came out of the magic refining tower and specially came to Penglai Island to participate in the auction. This is too abnormal. Mo Xingyu nodded. Is there a conflict between Steward Qin and Steward Jin? I feel that Steward Qin seems to be resentful. In any case, we don't have much of a need for the Tears of Cold Flame. It's better not to get involved at this time. The people of the 100 Flowers Gate immediately decided to withdraw from this competition. It was very unwise to get involved in a conflict between two factions for a medicinal ingredient that they didn't really need. Manager Jin, at the moment, there is no one who can continue to compete with Steward Qin. Should we just let him take the Tears of Cold Flame back or make a move? When the bidding reached a peak, the people of the auction house saw that the situation was not right and immediately reported it to Manager Jin. Hearing this, a hint of helplessness appeared on Manager Jin's face. In the end, he was still unable to test the thoughts of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. It could be considered that he had been completely destroyed by Steward Qin. Instruct someone to bid for the Tears of Frosty Flame. Manager Jin ordered without hesitation. Old Emperor only told him to use the Tears of Frost Flame to lure Di Baichen and the others out. He didn't say that he was going to sell the Tears of Frost Flame. Chapter 32:58. Hearing Manager Jin's instructions, his subordinates immediately rushed to the auction venue. They could not delay any longer, otherwise, the tears of frosty flame would fall into Steward Qin's hands. However, Manager Jin did not have the mood to pay attention to this. His mind was filled with how he was going to explain this to Elder D. He had messed up this matter, and things were a little troublesome. Looking at the situation, there shouldn't be anyone competing with Steward Qin anymore. A faint smile appeared on Shangguan Yingying's face. As long as Steward Qin could obtain the tears of frosty flame, they would be able to relax. Looking at Shangguan Yingying's optimistic appearance, Di Beichen shook his head with a complicated expression. I'm afraid things aren't that simple. Faintly, he had a premonition that this matter would not be completed so easily. If the Golden Flame Auction House was really willing to auction the tears of frosty flame in exchange for money, it would be better to directly discuss with Steward Qin and hand over the tears of frosty flame to him. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look at Di Beichen. She had never said anything, but in fact, she also had a bad premonition in her heart. Most of the time, when things went too smoothly, there would often be something wrong. What does this mean? Shangguan Yingying raised her eyebrows and looked at Di Beichen with a puzzled expression. I really don't want any more problems to happen. Di Beichen did not answer. He was currently unable to judge how this matter would develop. At this moment, the sound of a bid came from another box. 550,000 spirit stones. As this voice fell, everyone's expression changed. It seemed that the unforeseen event that they did not want to see the most had happened. The cultivators participating in the auction were also dumbfounded. It was one thing for a tears of frosty flame to be auctioned for a sky-high price of 500,000 spirit stones, but now there was actually someone raising the price. This was too terrifying. Most importantly, according to Yin Ye's introduction, they did not discover the preciousness of the tears of frosty flame. Could it be that they had misjudged and the tears of frosty flame was actually an extremely precious treasure? After hearing this voice, Steward Qin's expression immediately became ugly. This damned Manager Jin, he actually dared to play this trick on me. Steward Qin snorted coldly. Others did not know of Steward Jin's methods, but he was not unfamiliar with them. Previously, almost everyone had given up on competing for this item. Now, someone who had never placed a bid before had suddenly appeared. Needless to say, this person must be someone from the Golden Flame Auction House. It seemed that Manager Jin had made up his mind not to let the tears of glacial flame fall into his hands. 600,000 spiritual stones. 650,000 spiritual stones. 700,000 spiritual stones. 800,000 spiritual stones. Every time someone called out a price, the cultivators present couldn't help but be shocked. The speed at which the price was raised was too fast. Moreover, with such a high price, both parties didn't hesitate at all. It was as if they didn't put these spirit stones in their eyes. 1,000,000 spirit stones. The anger in Steward Qin's heart grew deeper and deeper. Back then, when he sold the tears of cold flame to the Golden Flame Auction House, he didn't charge too much. Now that the Golden Flame Auction House was making such a ruckus, how could he not be angry? Chapter 32:59. Oh my God, are the people in this box crazy? More than 1,000,000 spirit stones just to buy a set of medicinal herbs. No matter how precious a medicinal herb is, it can't be worth so many spirit stones, right? If they continue to compete like this, who knows what kind of price they will get. I'm afraid we are blind. This tears of frigid flame must be an extraordinary medicinal herb. Otherwise, they wouldn't have spent such a high price to compete for it. The crowd of cultivators began to discuss. Any medicinal herb that could be auctioned at such a price was usually extremely valuable. Although they didn't have the strength to compete for all of this, today's matter was really an eye-opener for them. When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three saw this scene, their expressions became ugly. This guy is deliberately causing trouble. Although the tears of frigid flame are precious, how can it be worth such a high price? A hint of anger quickly appeared on Shangguan Yingying's face. Originally, everything was going very smoothly, but from the looks of the current situation, it was very likely that it would be ruined. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed, and her expression quietly became heavy. This should be someone from the Golden Flame auction house. If it was an ordinary force, not to mention that the price has long exceeded the value of the tears of frigid flame, even if it was for Steward Qin's sake, they wouldn't continue to compete like this. Anyone could feel that Steward Qin and the other party were no longer bidding in a friendly manner. This clearly contained a strong sense of anger and hostility. Someone from the Golden Flame auction house made a move. Shangguan Yingying was stunned, and her face was filled with disbelief. It can't be. Then how can we buy it? Xiren patted Shangguan Yingying's shoulder and said, "You have always been in the sect, so I'm afraid you don't know much about the auction house. For some things that the auction house doesn't want to sell, they often choose to buy it back themselves. This is very common." Shangguan Yingying was different from the three of them. She had always been cultivating in the sect and had very few opportunities to go out, so she didn't know much about the outside world. Hearing this, Shangguan Yingying nodded helplessly. Obviously, she was still very speechless about this situation. Since they don't want to sell this thing, why take it out? Shangguan Yingying frowned. Wasn't this superfluous? It seems that the main purpose of the Golden Flame auction house is to lure us out. However, because Steward Qin has made his move, we cannot appear again. Therefore, they chose to take back the tears of frosty flame. Di Bei Chen's eyes flashed with wisdom as he slowly analyzed the situation in front of him. At present, besides this possibility, there was no other possibility. Then if Steward Qin did not bid, but we did, would the tears of cold flame fall into our hands? Shangguan Yingying could not help but ask. Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. That might not be the case. They might still take back the tears of glacial flame and come back to negotiate with us. The biggest problem now is that we don't know why Golden Flame auction house wants to lure us out. Di Beichen looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two with a deep gaze. This is what I'm most worried about. Chapter 3260. Di Beichen thought for a moment and said, "Although this is the biggest possibility, I feel that things might not be as simple as Steward Qin thinks. Just like how we don't know why the Golden Flame auction house has been collecting the tears of glacial flame all these years." "I understand what you mean." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. Her thoughts were the same as Di Beichen's. There were probably some problems that they had never thought of. Seeing that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's expressions were getting more and more serious, Xiren could not help but wave his hand and said, "Forget it. Since things have developed to this point, I'm afraid it's useless for you to think more about it. Why don't you just wait like this? If the Golden Flame auction house's purpose is to lure us out, I believe that they will definitely come looking for us. No matter what their purpose is, as long as we meet them, we will know sooner or later." As when Xiren's voice fell, although everyone felt helpless in their hearts, they knew that apart from this method, they really did not have any other way. The initiative was in the hands of the Golden Flame auction house. All they could do was wait for news. Just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were talking, the price of the auction was getting more and more terrifying. Everyone in the auction house was stunned by the price. In the history of the Golden Flame auction house, it was not that there had never been a situation where the price was raised to a very high level because of anger. However, it was really unheard of to raise the price to such an extent. The word spirit stones that came out of their mouths were no longer spirit stones, but just an ordinary number. Oh my God, these guys are too scary. If they continue to bid like this, the auction house will be the only one making money. Who asked them to be so rich? If they are willing to compete like this, we are happy to watch the show. I'm really impressed. Coming to the auction this time has really opened everyone's eyes. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were helpless when they saw this scene. The situation was already very clear. The Golden Flame auction house was clearly unwilling to hand over the tears of cold flame, and this Steward Qin was also a ruthless person. With Steward Qin's ability, I'm afraid he already knew that the person competing with him was someone from the auction house. However, he kept raising the price because he wanted to make things difficult for the Golden Flame auction house. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled up slightly. Although Steward Qin was a profiteer, she had to pay more attention to him when dealing with him. However, she had to admit that Steward Qin's current actions were indeed very satisfying. Steward Qin had done such a thing behind Steward Qin's back. If Steward Qin did not retaliate, it would not be worth it. If it were her, she would probably do the same. After all, since the other party was thinking of ways to make him unhappy, he naturally wouldn't let the other party be happy either. If this price continues, I'm afraid the Golden Flame auction house will be the one to be dumbfounded. Di Beichen couldn't help but chuckle. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. The price has already risen to 2 million spirit stones. Although there are still many cultivators who don't understand the current situation, I'm afraid some people with discerning eyes have already seen it. If this continues, more and more people will know about it. This will also be a big blow to the reputation of the Golden Flame auction house. I believe Steward Qin will not sit idly by. Chapter 3261. Speaking of which, this matter was originally Manager Jin's unkindness. Steward Qin's approach is also very normal. It can be said that it's an eye for an eye. When Xiren chuckled. The competition between the two people in charge of the two great forces was really exciting. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and nodded. In my opinion, I'm afraid Manager Jin won't be able to sit still. On the auction stage, Inya's face, which had always been extremely calm and indifferent, stiffened when she saw the completely uncontrollable increase in price. As soon as she heard that voice, she had already determined that the other party was someone from the auction house that she was extremely familiar with. At that time, she had already understood Manager Jin's intentions. However, the person in the other box was unusually persistent. No matter how they raised the price, the other party always followed suit. In her opinion, the other party was simply deliberately looking for trouble. If this continued, once this truly sky-high price was spread out, everyone with discerning eyes would know the real situation. In the end, wouldn't it become a joke? Thinking of this, Inya couldn't help but feel a little anxious. This situation couldn't continue like this. Either the auction house would choose to give up, or they could only persuade the other party to give up. Otherwise, this auction would be ruined because of this increase in price. Inya immediately gave a look to the person next to her. After that person understood, he quickly went to find Manager Jin. This matter was completely out of their control. If they didn't stop it now, it would be too late. Manager Jin obviously didn't expect Steward Qin to be so stubborn. He had been thinking about how to explain this matter to Di Lao. He didn't expect smoke to come out of the east and fire to come out of the west. It really made him anxious. How much has the price been raised now? Manager Jin asked. It's already 2.4 million spirit stones. The situation is completely out of control. All the guests are talking about this matter. Hearing this, Manager Jin couldn't help but pat his forehead. A deep sense of helplessness appeared on his face. It seemed that he had still underestimated Steward Qin's anger. He was afraid that if he couldn't give a reasonable explanation, Steward Qin would continue to make trouble. I understand. I'll deal with it. Steward Qin waved his hand, then sighed and immediately walked to the box where Steward Qin was. In the end, he still had to deal with the matter he had caused. He couldn't let Steward Qin ruin this auction. In the private room. When Steward Qin saw Steward Jean walk in with a smile on his face, he immediately understood the latter's plan. His eyes couldn't help but contain some sarcasm. "Steward Qin, I didn't expect you to come to the auction." Steward Jean said with a smile. "Since Manager Jean specially organized this auction, shouldn't you have expected that I would come?" Steward Qin looked at Steward Jean coldly. His attitude was no longer the same as when he was familiar with Steward Jean. Instead, it was full of unfamiliarity and hostility. Hearing the hidden meaning in Steward Qin's words, Steward Jean also understood that it was useless for him to continue being so careless. He couldn't help but say, "Steward Qin, why don't we discuss this matter properly? If this continues, it won't do us any good." However, Steward Qin sneered, "I don't care if it's good for me or not. As long as it's bad for your auction house, it's fine." Chapter 3262. Looking at Steward Qin's unyielding attitude, Manager Jean also felt a burst of embarrassment in his heart. He and Steward Qin had known each other for so many years, but this was the first time he had seen the latter being so difficult to talk to. It seemed that it would be extremely difficult to mend their relationship this time. "Steward Qin, why are you doing this? No matter what, we have been friends for so many years. If things get to this point, it will be very awkward for us to meet again in the future." Manager Jean said. Hearing this, Steward Qin sat up straight and looked at Manager Jean with a smile that was not a smile. However, the depths of his eyes were filled with sarcasm and ridicule. "Manager Jean, you were the one who did this first, and now you're putting all these problems on me. Isn't this a bit too laughable? Steward Qin, things are not what you think." "If it's not what I think, then what is it?" Steward Qin raised his eyebrows. "I told you that I needed the Tears of Frost Flame to discuss a business deal with the other party. You first promised me that you would do your best to help, and then you didn't respond to any news. You directly took out the Tears of Frost Flame to auction, wasn't it to lure the other party out? I've been doing business for so many years, and you want to cut me off and do it so obviously. What do you think I'll do?" At this moment, Steward Qin could no longer suppress his anger. He did not believe that Steward Qin, as a friend for so many years, would do such a thing, but now that things had come to this, it was useless for him to not believe it. Looking at Steward Qin's furious appearance, the helplessness and awkwardness on Manager Jin's face became even more intense. He immediately said, "Steward Qin, why don't you stop bidding first, and then I'll tell you about this matter properly. How about it?" "What a joke." Steward Qin laughed mockingly. "If I stop now, is there a need for you to continue talking to me?" Manager Jean waved his hand. "In any case, we have been friends for many years. I promise you that I will give you a satisfactory explanation. How about it? If I don't do it, you can tell me this news." "I won't say anything." Steward Qin glanced at Manager Jean indifferently. After seeing that the other party's expression was extremely serious, his expression became a little better. "If you dare to trick me again in this matter, then there will be nothing to discuss between us in the future. Don't worry, it definitely won't happen." Manager Jean hurriedly promised. Seeing this, Steward Qin was silent for a moment before giving up on bidding. Enya, who was on the auction stage, quietly heaved a sigh of relief when she saw that Steward Qin had finally stopped bidding. Fortunately, she did not cause too much trouble, and the Tears of Cold Flame was also taken back by the Golden Flame auction house. "You can speak now." From beginning to end, Steward Qin's face was cold. If the other party couldn't give him a satisfactory answer, he wouldn't let it go. Most importantly, no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't think of any other reason for Steward Jean to do this. Steward Jean sat down beside Steward Qin. His chubby face was still full of smiles. "Steward Qin, to be honest, I really don't have any thoughts of snatching business from you. Steward Jean went straight to the point. Then what is it for? Chapter 3263. I also asked the reason for doing this, but the higher-ups are the higher-ups. If they don't want to tell me the reason, I can't do anything about it. You and I have been old friends for so many years. Although we sometimes scheme against each other, it's only because of the benefits. I really haven't done such a thing to undermine you. As he spoke, Manager Jean observed the change in Steward Chen's expression. After discovering that Steward Chen was still indifferent, he couldn't help but say, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. There are some things that I'm forced to do. Steward Chen looked at Manager Jean with a complicated gaze. For a moment, he couldn't be sure whether what Manager Jean said was true or false. However, he also vaguely felt that what Steward Chen said might not be false. After all, they had known each other for so many years, and he also had some understanding of the people behind Manager Jean. Then you don't know the fundamental reason? Steward Chen was somewhat incredulous. If it wasn't for business, what's the use of luring them out? Manager Jean shook his head. This is also what I don't understand. In fact, although I have been collecting the tears of cold flame all these years, I don't know what they are used for. Don't be angry with me because of this matter. After all, we have been friends for so many years. Next time, as long as I can give you the benefits within my ability, I will definitely give it to you. How about it? Hearing Manager Jin's words, Steward Chen did not immediately answer. In fact, he also had some doubts about Bailey Hongzhuang wanting to use the tears of cold flame to refine pills. He always felt that this matter was not so simple, but when he thought about it carefully, he did not know where the problem came from. Is what you said true? Manager Jean nodded with a serious expression. I can swear that there is absolutely no deception. Steward Chen looked at Manager Jean for a long time before saying, I will believe you for the time being. If such a thing happens again in the future, don't blame me for not taking into account our past friendship. Not only that, I have one more request. Seeing that Steward Chen had finally relented, Manager Jean heaved a sigh of relief. Speak. If you want to participate in this business, you can't leave me behind. Steward Chen said slowly. How could he allow the Golden Flame auction house to snatch away the business opportunity that he had found with great difficulty? At the very least, they should get a share of the loot. As soon as this was said, Manager Jean couldn't help but frown. I'm afraid I can't make the decision on this matter. You don't have to tell me all this nonsense. If you can't do it, then the trouble between us will never end. After thinking for a moment, Manager Jean said, I can't guarantee this matter, but I will try my best. Moreover, I don't think the decision made by the higher-ups is necessarily for business. Although I told them that you intend to use the tears of glacial flame to do business, they don't know what kind of business it is. I don't think it's possible for you to go through so much trouble for a business that you don't understand. Why don't you wait for my news first? We'll talk after everything is clear. What do you think? Chapter 3264. It seems that Steward Jean and Steward Chen have reached an agreement. Seeing that Steward Chen had stopped bidding, Bailey Hongzhuang immediately understood. Di Beichen smiled faintly. It's absolutely impossible for Steward Jean to sit back and watch the situation become like this. I just don't know how they talked about it. With Steward Chen's character, if he doesn't get some benefits, he will definitely not give up. When Xiren raised his eyebrows, but this kind of thing obviously has nothing to do with us. Next, we can only wait for Steward Jean to contact us. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two nodded. They only hoped that what Steward Jean talked to them about was not something they could not do. After all, the Golden Flame auction house was their only hope to get the tears of frigid heat. Once the negotiation failed, then all their hopes would be destroyed. There were no more problems in the following auction. Although the things being auctioned were very good, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were focused on the tears of frigid heat and did not have the time to pay attention to these things. Therefore, they did not bid for anything in the entire auction. Those 4 guys participated in the entire auction but did not bid for anything. It seems that they are also 4 poor ghosts. Until the auction came to an end, Lu Jiangang could not help but look at the box upstairs, his face full of sarcasm. When bidding for the map before, he thought that these guys had a lot of resources. He did not expect that from the beginning to the end, they just came here to look and did not make a move at all. There were so many treasures in a normal auction, he did not believe that they would not be able to enter the other party's eyes. It has only been half a year since they came to Penglai Island. It is not easy for them to earn spirit stones. They did that on purpose to make us spend a lot of money. Speaking of which, it is really abominable. Gue Jun's face was very ugly. With their previous wealth, they did not care about 10,000 spirit stones at all. But now, they had to pay tens of thousands of spirit stones, which was a big loss for them. Gao Hanchuan's face had been gloomy since the start of the auction. Since he met Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, he had already suffered a lot in the hands of these 4 guys. This time, he had actually fallen into the hands of the other party. Even if he didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that this series of events had really hit him hard. He had been in Penglai Island for so many years and had always felt that he was very good. However, he did not expect that he would be fooled by 4 newcomers. One could imagine the displeasure in his heart. When we get back, we'll take our time to plan. If we can't tear these 4 fellows into 1,000 pieces, I'll never be satisfied. Gao Hanchun said fiercely. These 4 people had become a demon in his heart. If he couldn't kill these 4 people with his own hands, his cultivation would be greatly affected. As a cultivator, the most worrying thing was to have a demon in his heart. He had already felt that these 4 guys were his demon. Upon hearing Gao Hanchuan's words, Gue Jun and Lu Jiangang nodded their heads. They had already reached the end of their patience with these 4 fellows. The sooner they finished them off, the easier it would be for them to completely relax and avoid being unhappy. Chapter 3265. As soon as they walked out of the private room, they saw Steward Qin, who had also come out of the private room next door. When Steward Qin saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, he couldn't help but look surprised. Obviously, he didn't expect to see Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 here. He was very clear about the Golden Flame Auction House's requirements for private rooms. Logically speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 could only appear in the ordinary seats. It was impossible for them to appear here. For a moment, Steward Qin also had some doubts in his heart. Could it be that Steward Qin lied to him again? In fact, the Golden Flame Auction House had already contacted Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, so they arranged for them to be in the private room. Seeing Steward Qin's appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 revealed a faint smile. However, in order to not let others find out that they knew each other, neither side said a word. They only gave each other a look and tacitly left the Golden Flame Auction House. This time, when they left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 went through the auction house's VIP passage. There was no congestion at all, and it was very smooth for them to leave. I wonder if Gao Hanchun and the other 2 will be waiting for us at the door. Ziren raised his eyebrows. He had already felt Gao Hanchuan's strong murderous intent when they were in conflict. After the auction of the map fragments, Gao Hanchun probably hated them to the extreme. Di Beichen chuckled, it's useless even if they wait. Our way out is on the other side of the street. For the sake of our treasure map, even if they don't come to us, we have to take the initiative to look for them. Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with excitement. She was really curious about the situation after the 4 map fragments were pieced together. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded, that's true. But before that, we have to wait for news from the Golden Flame auction house. Between the two, the Tears of Frigid Flame was still the most important. Just as Xiren had expected, Gao Hanchun and the other 3 didn't leave after leaving the auction house. They did plan to make a long-term plan before making a move, but before that, they had to know where Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 lived. The entire Penglai Island was very large. If they were to search for them one by one, it would be too unrealistic. However, they waited until the cultivators who participated in the auction had left, but they didn't see any trace of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3. Do they know that we're going to find trouble with them, so they're avoiding us and thinking of ways to escape? After Lu Jiangang confirmed that there was no one else in the auction house, he couldn't help but frown. This was really troublesome. I think so. Gue Jun's expression was extremely ugly. He did not expect that he would end up with nothing. With their cultivation, they are no match for us at all, so they can only hide from us. Of course, how are we going to find them? Gao Hanchuan's face darkened. Forget it, let's go back first. If they're deliberately avoiding us, there's nothing we can do. But as long as they're still on Penglai Island, we'll definitely find them. After today's incident, many people must have noticed them. Plus, they're related to the Golden Flame auction house. It shouldn't be too difficult for us to find them. Chapter 3266. With the perfect end of the auction, Manager Jean immediately went to find Elder D. No matter how unwilling he was to face Elder D, there was no point in not reporting the truth. Elder D, today's probing plan failed. Manager Jean lowered his head. I originally planned to test if D. Bei and the others were interested in the Tears of Frosty Flame, but Manager Jean's appearance ruined this plan. During the entire auction, D. Bei and the others did not win anything. Elder D glanced at Manager Jean indifferently and nodded. I understand. Seeing that Elder D did not have any reaction, Manager Jean could not help but be surprised. He thought that Elder D would scold him to his face. Then I'll go look for them later and test their strength? Manager Jean asked tentatively. No need. Manager Jean was stunned and did not seem to react. He could not help but ask again, Elder D, are you saying that I don't need to go? There's no need to continue with this plan. You can leave. I want to be alone. Elder D waved his hand. There was a hint of exhaustion in his expression. Ever since he returned from chatting with Du Jue, his mood was very low. Seeing the young master in so much pain and not being able to do anything to help, this feeling was also very painful. If he could not find the young master, the hope of finding him in the future would become lower and lower. The problem with his physique was very likely to take the young master's life. All these years, he had always been very clear about the pain of Du Jue and the others. If this continued, he really did not know what kind of scene it would be. He was afraid that no one in the family would be able to accept it. It was a pity that he had stayed on Penglai Island for so many years and could not find any news. He was really too useless. Manager Jean looked at Elder D, who was obviously not interested in talking to him. He was secretly surprised and could not help but let out a sigh of relief. This way, he could also explain to Manager Jean. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to the inn, they stayed in the room and did not go anywhere because they were waiting for Manager Jin's arrival. If they guessed correctly, Manager Jean should be coming to find them soon. After all, this was the reason why the latter took out the Tears of Frosty Flame to auction. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others did not receive any news in the inn for a few days. They immediately felt that the situation was a little strange. It's been 3 days, and there's still no news from the Golden Flame auction house. Could something have happened? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but frown. No matter what the reason was, 3 days was enough time for the other party to find them. Di Bei-chen's expression was somewhat complicated. Could it be that our judgment was wrong? That shouldn't be. Indeed. In the end, the Golden Flame auction house took back the Tears of Frosty Flame. It doesn't make sense at all. Di Bei-chen's face darkened. But if we're right, how could they have not made any moves? Chapter 3267. As time passed, the mood of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three became heavier and heavier. At this point, they naturally knew that the Golden Flame auction house would not come looking for them. Otherwise, it would be impossible for there to be no news for so long. Do you think it's possible that Manager Jean and Manager Qin have already reached an agreement, so they cancelled this plan? When Ziren voiced out his guess. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows were slightly furrowed, and there was some uncertainty in her expression. If an agreement is really reached, then Steward Qin should inform us. Perhaps Steward Qin is still unwilling to reveal our identities, so he waited for us to return before discussing in detail. Shangguan Yingying said. Di Bei-chen shook his head and said in a low voice, "No, if Steward Qin and Manager Jean could really reach an agreement, they would have already reached an agreement before. How could such a storm happen? With Steward Qin's personality, once he obtains the Tears of Cold Flame, he will definitely inform us as soon as possible. Even if he doesn't come personally, he can find someone else to inform us." He was very clear about Steward Qin's curiosity and dedication to Bailey Hongzhuang's alchemy. As long as it was successful, he would definitely want to talk about this business with Bailey Hongzhuang as soon as possible, and not have any news like now. Doesn't that mean we don't have any hope at all? Ziren's face paled. Compared to the expectations they had when they came, the current situation had given them a huge blow. If it really doesn't work, we'll take the initiative to look for the Golden Flame auction house. Bailey Hongzhuang slowly said, her delicate little face filled with determination. No matter what, at least we can know the other party's conditions. It's better than guessing here. This was their only hope. If they couldn't get the Tears of Cold Flame, they wouldn't be able to return to the magic refining tower. In fact, she had already made all the preparations. If this still didn't work, then they could only snatch it. In order to transform Di Bei-chen's physique, they were willing to do anything. No matter what method they used, as long as they could achieve their goal, they would not hesitate. Shangguan Yingying nodded. Hongzhuang is right. Why don't we go to the Golden Flame auction house and ask for a Tears of Frigid Heat? No matter what the conditions are, as long as we can do it, it's fine. What I'm afraid of is that no matter what conditions we offer, they won't agree. When Ziren sighed. He could faintly feel that the Tears of Frigid Flame would be of great use to the Golden Flame auction house. If the Golden Flame auction house didn't value them, then all their efforts would be for naught. For a time, everyone's mood became heavier. They had originally planned to look for Gao Hanchuan's group after the matter of the Tears of Frigid Flame was settled. Unfortunately, there had been no news of the Tears of Frigid Flame. Therefore, they had no interest in Gao Hanchuan's group. At the same time, Gao Hanchuan's group was constantly looking for Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4. Now that the grand auction had ended, many cultivators on Penglai Island had left. Therefore, it was much easier to find them than before. Chapter 3268. Where did these 4 fellows run off to? Lu Jiangang frowned. We've been looking for them for so long but we haven't seen any trace of them. Could they have left already? Gue Jun shook his head. That shouldn't be possible. Big Brother has been keeping an eye on the pier and didn't see any trace of them leaving. I think they must still be on Penglai Island but we haven't found them yet. We've already searched the entire Penglai Island but unfortunately, we can't search room by room. Could it be that they've been staying in their rooms the whole time? Lu Jianlong's eyes lit up as he voiced out his doubts. If that was the case, he felt that the four of them were too strange. That is possible. Guo Jun pondered and said, could it be that they know that we're looking for them so they're hiding? Now that Mo Xingyu and the rest have left Penglai Island and I've seen the recent movements of the Golden Flame auction house, they don't seem to have any contact with them. In that case, they basically don't have any backing. It's very easy for us to take action against them. Lu Jiangang was a little anxious. They finally found a good opportunity, and if they let Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest slip away, they didn't know when they would meet them again. Forget it. Don't be anxious. Let's continue looking. They can't possibly stay in there forever. Guo Jun sighed. They had no other choice but to search for a needle in a haystack. On this day, someone knocked on the door of Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest's room. Knock knock. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest couldn't help but look at each other. Their eyes lit up. Could it be that the people from the Golden Flame auction house were looking for them? However, when the door opened, they didn't see anyone from the Golden Flame auction house but a waiter from the inn. When the waiter saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest looking at him, his eyes flashed with surprise. He then said, "Young master, there's a young master downstairs looking for you." Di Beichen listened to the waiter's words and his handsome and elegant face revealed a trace of surprise. "Looking for me?" The waiter nodded. "It's the young master that you invited to drink with you that day. Do you still remember him?" "It turns out to be him." Di Beichen suddenly understood and nodded. "I got it." After the attendant left, Di Beichen turned around and exchanged glances with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. He really didn't expect Di Yujue to come looking for him. Could he be here on behalf of the Golden Flame auction house? Wen Xiren asked immediately. "I don't know, but I think that's probably not the reason." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "If they're here to discuss a deal with us, the Golden Flame auction house only needs to send manager Jean. I'm afraid they don't need someone with a higher status to come here personally. Beichen, go take a look first. It's always good to get some information." Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "You're close friends, aren't you? Even though this fate came out of nowhere, it wasn't a bad thing. Then I'll go down first." Di Beichen stroked Bailey Hongzhuang's soft hair and his eyes were full of affection. "Go ahead." Chapter 3269. Hongzhuang, don't you think that if Beichen were to ask that person for the medicine, his chances of success would be much higher? Shang Guaniying couldn't help but speak up. She had wanted to say this earlier. Since their hopes were already slim, then Di Beichen's friend was their biggest hope. Even Steward Jean couldn't make a decision about the Tears of Glacial Flame. This person's status was higher than Steward Jin's, so he should be able to make a decision. At the very least, there was a glimmer of hope. However, just as she was about to speak, she was stopped by Xiren, so she didn't say anything. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. "Actually, I think so too." "Then why didn't you remind Beichen just now? This is our only hope." Shang Guaniying looked puzzled. This was related to Di Beichen's life. Beichen should know this better than we do. He doesn't want their relationship to have an additional layer of benefits. Once he asks for help, then this simple friendship will no longer be pure. Beichen has his own ideas on what to do. If we force this idea on him, it will only put pressure on him. A faint smile appeared on her delicate face. She was as elegant and indifferent as a lotus flower that had just emerged from the water, but revealed a sense of wisdom and gentleness. When Xiren quietly gave Bailey Hongzhuang a thumbs up. The more time he spent with Bailey Hongzhuang, the more he understood why Di Beichen, who had never been tempted by women, was so affectionate towards Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, Bailey Hongzhuang was an extraordinary and considerate woman. It was really rare to see someone who could bear to be unfaithful to her. Beichen is under much more pressure than we are because of the tears of glacial flame. These days, I haven't seen him reveal a true smile. Since he can now chat with a confidant, that's great. Xiren's lips curled into a faint smile. This brother of his had been suppressing many things in his heart and was unwilling to say them out loud. These days, they had been anxious about the tears of glacial flame, but Di Beichen was definitely the one who suffered the most. Seeing Xiren and Bailey Hongzhuang's tacit understanding, Shang Guanying couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of which, her impetuous personality was really slow in this aspect. When Di Beichen went downstairs, he was brought to the private room by the waiter. He saw that Di Yujue had already ordered a table of dishes and was waiting for him. "Little brother, you're here." Seeing Di Beichen appear, Di Yujue's face quickly revealed a smile. He immediately waved to Di Beichen, "Sit." After Di Beichen saw Di Yujue, his mood obviously improved a lot. The heaviness that had been suppressed in his heart for the past few days also quietly dissipated. "I'm here to drink with you today." Di Yujue laughed, "You should be free, right?" Di Beichen nodded, "Of course. I just didn't expect that a busy person like you would have time to drink with me." Hearing this, Di Yujue chuckled and said, "I'm going to leave Penglai Island soon. I don't know when we'll meet again, so I came to drink with you before I leave." Chapter 3270. It had been a long time since he had met a young man that he was comfortable with. Since he had met a fated person, it would be a pity if they never met again. Thus, he might as well drink to his heart's content before leaving. This time, his trip to the outside world was of great importance. If this news was true, then everything would be fine. If it was all for naught, then the situation would be even worse. "I see." Di Beichen's eyes flashed with understanding. He had only just met Di Yujue. He did not expect the latter to leave so soon. However, all good things must come to an end. It was already good that they were fated to meet each other. "Since you are leaving soon, then I will definitely drink to my heart's content with you today." Seeing that Di Beichen did not ask about the reason for his departure and where he was going, Di Yujue's eyes revealed a trace of admiration. Perhaps the reason why he and Di Beichen could get along so well was also related to Di Beichen's character of never asking about details. That's undoubtedly the best. Di Yujue picked up his wine cup, "Let me toast you." The two drank to their heart's content and chatted about everything. However, they rarely talked about themselves. However, this did not hinder their conversation. On the contrary, the two of them chatted happily. However, during this process, both of them knew that the other was not in a good mood. Both of them were somewhat depressed and heavy. "By the way, did you get any treasures at the auction this time?" Di Yujue smiled at Di Beichen and asked. Hearing this, Di Beichen shook his head, "I didn't bid for anything. The only thing I wanted to bid for has not been bought yet." Regarding this, he really felt helpless. Thinking about how Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were worried about him, he felt very uncomfortable in his heart. Speaking of which, the reason why they were like this was all because of him. Di Beichen also knew in his heart that if they wanted to get the tears of frigid flame, they would most likely have to start with Di Yujue. However, when he came to find Di Yujue, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two were silent about it. How could he not understand the deep meaning behind this? Thinking about how Bailey Hongzhuang might become once he fell into eternal sleep, Di Beichen's heart constantly throbbed with pain. Therefore, he had no choice but to be selfish. For his beloved Hongzhuang, even if there was only a glimmer of hope, he had to work hard. In fact, death was not scary to him. Leaving Hongzhuang was the scariest thing. It was a pain that he could not bear. The tears of frigid flame. Di Baichen smiled slightly, then sighed and said, "The bidding for the tears of frigid flame in this auction was really too intense. I didn't even have the chance to intervene." Following Di Baichen's words, Di Yujue also understood. "I also heard about this matter. It caused quite a stir. Even a few days after the auction ended, there were still many people lamenting about this matter. However, what do you want the tears of frigid flame for?" At this moment, Di Yujue couldn't help but think of what Di Lao had said to him before. Di Lao felt that Di Baichen was very likely the person they were looking for. Although he could see through Di Baichen's disguise, he couldn't see Di Baichen's true appearance. Regarding this, he couldn't make a judgment. Chapter 3271. Di Yujue was well aware of the effects of the tears of frigid frost. Normal cultivators wouldn't need the tears of frigid frost at all. Could it be that Di Baichen was the person they were looking for? However, seeing that Di Baichen was safe and sound and that his aura had reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm, Di Yujue couldn't help but dismiss this idea. This was simply impossible. Even the people in their family couldn't do this, so how could the outside world do it? "My wife is an alchemist." Di Baichen smiled faintly. She usually likes to study some special medicinal herbs. However, she is very talented in this area and has always been called a genius alchemist. According to Di Baichen's wishes, he didn't want to lie to Di Yujue. However, his physique was really a big weakness. Moreover, they didn't know the reason why the Golden Flame auction house was collecting the tears of frigid frost, so he couldn't do anything. Currently, the safest explanation was the one they had thought of before. Regarding this, he could only apologize to Di Yujue. Hearing Di Baichen's words, Di Yujue finally understood. He had also seen many alchemists with strong alchemy skills, especially some alchemists who liked to innovate. Usually, they would always think of combining some herbs to make special pills. It was also because of the existence of these alchemists who liked to research and were full of creativity that alchemy could continue to develop. Towards this kind of alchemist, he was also very respectful. After all, there weren't many people who could be so creative. Even if they were alchemists, most alchemists could only refine medicinal pills according to the recipe. They didn't even have the idea of creating their own. "I see." Di Yujue chuckled. "Is your wife the one who was sitting next to you when we met last time?" Although Bailey Hongzhuang was dressed as a man, Di Yujue could tell at a glance that she was a woman. Seeing that Di Yujue saw through all his disguises, Di Baichen didn't find it strange. He immediately smiled and nodded. "Yes, she is my wife. I didn't expect you to be married at such a young age." "That's pretty good." Di Yujue drank a glass of wine. Most of the cultivators on Penglai Island would get married very late. After all, when they were in the outside world, they would have spent all their time on cultivation. Not to mention, it was not easy to find a partner who was as strong as them. Now that he thought about it, he understood that Di Baichen's group of 4 were probably 2 pairs of partners. This was very interesting. "Actually, my wife and I just got married not long ago. After that, we came to Penglai Island and found that there were many strong people on Penglai Island. We were really frogs in a well before. Almost everyone will have this feeling when they come to Penglai Island for the first time. However, even in Penglai Island, we are just frogs in a well." Di Yujue shook his head. "However, people walk to a higher place. It is normal to walk from a small place to a big platform." Listening to Di Yujue's words, Di Baichen couldn't help but frown. He felt that Di Yujue seemed to be implying something. However, seeing that Di Yujue didn't intend to continue talking about this point, Di Baichen stopped asking. Chapter 3272. Is your wife disappointed that she wasn't able to win back the tears of frigid flame? Di Yujue stared at Di Beichen and slowly asked. Hearing this, Di Beichen couldn't help but think of Bailey Hongzhuang's worried look recently. He couldn't help but nod and said, indeed, she has been a little depressed recently. Ever since the problem with his physique exploded, Bailey Hongzhuang had been very depressed, and the smile on her face was no longer the same as before. Thinking back to when he and Bailey Hongzhuang walked step by step from Fengbo country to the big platform, no matter what kind of problem they encountered, Bailey Hongzhuang was always full of confidence, and there was never a trace of despair on her face. When the boat reaches the bridge head, everything will be fine. There is always a way out. These were the beliefs that Bailey Hongzhuang had always firmly believed in. However, the problem with his physique was a heavy blow to Bailey Hongzhuang, causing Bailey Hongzhuang's mood to be extremely heavy recently. Seeing Di Beichen's worried look, Di Yujue's eyes flashed with a light, and the corner of his lips curled up. He said, I didn't expect you to be such a righteous person. You value your wife so much. Most cultivators only cared about their own interests, and there weren't many who wholeheartedly thought about their partner. After all, just increasing one's cultivation required a lot of time, and this was also the reason why many people didn't have a partner. Di Beichen smiled faintly, I've made a fool of myself. But my wife loves me deeply, so it's only right for me to treat her like this. Haha. Di Yujue laughed brightly, seeing you like this, it reminds me of me 20 years ago. It seems that we are indeed the same kind of people. You love your wife as much as you love your life. Actually, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Thinking back, he and his wife were also stuck together like glue, and were very loving. If that incident hadn't happened, he and his wife would still be the same as 20 years ago. Unfortunately, his wife didn't want to see him at all. Di Yujue's reaction was clearly beyond Di Beichen's expectations. He didn't expect Di Yujue to react the same way as him. The smile on his face immediately brightened. I think that's what every man should do. Di Yujue nodded slightly. That's right. Those guys don't understand the true joy in this. If they only focus on cultivation, won't it be boring in the end? Speaking of which, I just heard a piece of news. It seems that your surname is Di. Hearing this, Di Beichen was slightly startled. He was no stranger to this question. Back when he was on the Emerald Island, the old man had also asked him the same question. However, ever since he was young, he had never felt that there was anything wrong with the surname Di. On the contrary, after he came to Penglai Island, everyone seemed to have some doubts about his surname. Not bad. Speaking of which, it's really a coincidence that my surname is also Di. Di Yujue's smile widened. Perhaps it's the will of the heavens. On Penglai Island, there are very few people with the surname Di. Di Beichen's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. Your surname is also Di? Di Yujue nodded. That's right. To be honest, I haven't met anyone with the surname Di since I was young. What a coincidence. Di Beichen chuckled. As for his surname, Di Beichen also knew the origin of it. Chapter 3273. With Si Tuyen's eyesight, he could tell at a glance that this jade pendant was not ordinary. It was definitely a precious item, and on this jade pendant was a single word, Di. After seeing this jade pendant, Si Tuyen thought for a long time. He felt that this was the only keepsake Di Beichen had, and it was very likely to represent Di Beichen's identity. As for the meaning of the word Di, Si Tuyen couldn't figure it out in a short time. In the end, after thinking about it, he felt that it was very likely to be a surname. Therefore, he dismissed the idea of having Di Beichen use the surname Si Tuyen, and named him Di Beichen. In fact, until now, neither Si Tuyen nor Di Beichen knew the true meaning of the word Di. However, Di Beichen felt that using it as a surname was quite good. This was the only connection between him and his birth parents. Ha, that's why I said that everything is fate. Di Yujue laughed loudly. For this fate, we must drink. All right. Di Beichen raised his wine cup. The two clinked their cups, and immediately drank the wine in one gulp. Their faces were filled with joy. In this vast sea of people, it was very difficult to meet someone who was extremely congenial with him. Moreover, the other party had so many characteristics that were similar to him. It was really too much fate. Little brother, since you and I are so fated, then I'll give you a portion of these tears of frost fire. It's also to make your wife happy. Di Yujue was obviously in a very good mood. He immediately decided to give a portion of these tears of frost fire to Di Beichen. Hearing Di Yujue's words, Di Beichen couldn't help but be stunned. He stared blankly at Di Yujue. This surprise was really too big, and for a moment, he couldn't come back to his senses. Previously, he had been thinking about how to ask Di Yujue for a portion of the tears of frosty flame, but he had never thought of how to ask. Furthermore, there was nothing he could take out in exchange. However, in order to be able to continue being together with Hong Zhuang, even if he had to be thick-skinned and shameless, he had to get the tears of Frosty back. However, before he could even open his mouth, Di Yujue had already decided to give him the tears of frigid flame. How could he not be shocked? For me. Di Beichen couldn't help but raise his voice. His handsome face couldn't hide the astonishment and surprise. Looking at Di Beichen's expression, Di Yujue's smile widened. That's right, I'll give it to you as long as you and your wife are happy. He owed his wife too much over the years, but unfortunately, he couldn't make up for it even if he wanted to. Now that he and Di Beichen were so fated, he naturally didn't want Di Beichen to be like him, only able to see his wife unhappy. Although the tears of frost fire were very important to them, they had collected quite a lot over the years. Giving away a portion wasn't a problem. Most importantly, it was rare for him to meet such a fated person. After receiving Di Yujue's confirmation, Di Beichen couldn't help but feel a trace of ecstasy. Their biggest problem had been solved just like that. How could he not be happy? Young Master Di, thank you so much. Di Beichen couldn't help but stand up. The joy on his face couldn't be concealed. Perhaps this wasn't a big deal to Di Yujue, but it was equivalent to saving his life. Chapter 3274. Of course, to Di Beichen, the pain of not being able to break through due to the suppression of his physique was far from comparable to the pain of seeing Bailey Hongzhuang sad. Recently, Bailey Hongzhuang had spent almost all of her efforts on him. In order to help him break through, Bailey Hongzhuang had put in a lot of effort. If Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't an alchemist, their current situation would be even worse. However, he also knew that it was precisely because of Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in alchemy and medicine that she couldn't help him solve the problem of his physique. This was what made Bailey Hongzhuang feel the most pain. To be able to cure other cultivators, but not be able to do anything for the person you love, this was an indescribable pain for anyone. During this period of time, Di Beichen was in pain, and Bailey Hongzhuang was in pain as well. When they faced each other, the guilt in their hearts towards each other deepened. This was the worst thing. But now, Di Yujue's words gave him hope. Now that they had gathered all of the medicinal ingredients, they were only missing a portion of the tears of cold flame. Once they gathered all of the medicinal ingredients, they would no longer have to worry. Seeing Di Beichen so happy, Di Yujue couldn't help but chuckle. Even though he already knew how much Di Beichen cared about his wife, Di Beichen's wild joy still exceeded his expectations. Even so, Di Yujue felt happy for Di Beichen from the bottom of his heart. This was because when he saw Di Beichen at this moment, it was as if he saw himself more than 20 years ago. Being able to see others happy was also a very good thing. It's rare for you and me to be so fated. I'm naturally willing to help you. There's no need to be so grateful. It's as if I saved your life. Du Jue laughed and waved his hand. Quickly sit down. Listening to Du Jue's words, Di Beichen really wanted to say that Du Jue's actions had indeed saved his life. This was a true life-saving grace. However, in the end, Di Beichen still didn't say these words, but he had already firmly remembered all of this in his heart. If there was a place where he could repay Du Jue in the future, he was willing to go through fire and water without hesitation. Although Du Jue said it lightly and looked extremely indifferent, Di Beichen knew that the value of the tears of cold flame was not simple. If it was really so easy to take it out, when Steward Qin went to find Steward Jean wouldn't have disagreed. Such a rare medicinal ingredient, Du Jue gave it to him without any compensation. This already proved how important his position as a friend in Du Jue's heart was. He was grateful from the bottom of his heart. In fact, not only was Di Beichen pleasantly surprised by Du Jue's gift at this moment, Du Jue would also be glad that he made such a decision in the future after knowing everything. Otherwise, he would really regret it for the rest of his life. Young Master Di, I'm really grateful to you. Di Beichen couldn't help but say it again, his pair of dark eyes full of gratitude. Haha. Seeing Di Beichen so persistent, Du Jue couldn't help but laugh. Since you and I are already friends, you don't have to call me young Master Di. My name is Du Jue. Chapter 3275. After Du Jue heard Di Beichen say his name, the smile in his eyes couldn't help but deepen. He already knew Di Beichen's name from Di Lao, and at the same time, he also knew that Di Beichen had always considered himself as Di Beichen on Penglai Island. At this moment, when Di Beichen told him his name, he said his real name. This proved that Di Beichen also valued this friend of his. Being honest with him made him feel very satisfied. At least he didn't misjudge him. Come, let's continue drinking. Du Jue raised his wine cup. It's been a long time since I met a friend who can drink to his heart's content. I didn't expect it to be a young man who is younger than me by more than 20 years. Following Du Jue's words, Di Beichen's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. The Du Jue in front of him was extremely young. He looked like he was only 20 or 30 years old, but according to Du Jue, he seemed to be 40 or 50 years old. This was completely different from what Di Beichen thought before. He really couldn't see Du Jue's age. What? Are you very surprised? Du Jue looked at Di Beichen's slightly sluggish appearance and already understood Di Beichen's thoughts. He couldn't help but chuckle. In fact, even he himself felt that it was very strange that he would get along so well with such a little guy. This is a bit out of my expectations. Di Beichen frankly admitted that he always felt that Du Jue should be in existence similar to a big brother. He didn't expect that Du Jue's age was already enough to be his elder. However, it was very difficult for people to associate Du Jue with his real age. Di Beichen couldn't help but think of the rejuvenation pill. Could it be that Du Jue also took the rejuvenation pill, so his appearance became like this? Ever since he came to Penglai Island, he already knew that there were many things that did not exist in the outside world here. It was not strange for Penglai Island to have the rejuvenation pill. That's nothing. As one's cultivation increases, one's appearance will remain unchanged. If one's breakthrough speed is fast enough, one will become younger and younger. This is also the reason why everyone has been pursuing the path of cultivation. Not only for a longer lifespan, but also to maintain your youth for a longer period of time. I believe you will do the same in the future. Du Jue smiled faintly. He was able to determine Di Beichen's age. To be able to cultivate to the 5th level of the purple realm at such a young age was already considered a genius. In the future, if you meet someone stronger, they might look the same age as you. Some might even look younger than you, but they are already old monsters who have cultivated for many years. So that's how it is. Di Beichen nodded with a sigh. According to Di Yujue's explanation, he shouldn't have taken the rejuvenation pill. It was only due to the increase in his strength that his appearance remained at the age of 20 or 30. Di Beichen couldn't help but think of Lan Yunxiao and the others. Lan Yunxiao and the others were already geniuses, but they were also unable to achieve this. Then how strong was Di Yujue's talent in cultivation to be able to achieve this? He couldn't guess, but he couldn't help but admire Di Yujue. This kind of person was a true expert. The path of cultivation is very long. You will slowly understand it in the future. This process from not knowing to knowing is also very interesting. Chapter 3276. Di Beichen and Di Yujue were drinking while listening to Di Yujue's words. They suddenly felt as if their horizons had been broadened. Previously, when he was in the outside world, he felt that as long as his cultivation reached the purple realm, he would not be far from the peak. However, according to Di Yujue, the path of cultivation was simply endless. It was impossible for one's cultivation to be unable to break through after reaching a certain level. It was just that as one's cultivation grew stronger, it would be harder to break through. However, there would always be a lack of geniuses among human cultivators. Just because you could not do it did not mean that others could not do it. There would always be a genius who would appear and break through the shackles of this realm. Perhaps it was because of this that cultivation was so popular and continued to develop. Di Beichen had a deep understanding of this. He also felt that Di Yujue's strength was much more tyrannical than his own. No wonder he could not sense Di Yujue's strength at all. That was because the difference in strength between the two of them was simply too great. For such a cultivator, even the slightest bit of unfavorable thoughts would be immediately discovered by the other party. This was the difference between them. Di Beichen had a faint feeling in his heart that Di Yujue's cultivation talent was definitely not inferior to his own. However, Di Yujue had lived for more than 20 years more than him. Di Beichen simply could not imagine what kind of cultivation he had now. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two had been waiting in the room for Di Beichen to return. However, Di Beichen had obviously been gone for a long time. Even though it was already past dinner time, they did not see Di Beichen return at all. Regarding this, the three of them were surprised and could only continue to wait. However, according to the waiter's description, Di Beichen seemed to have been drinking with the other party without leaving the private room. It seems that they really hit it off well. After chatting for so long, they still haven't finished talking. That's really amazing. Sheng Guanying couldn't help but sigh. If it were her, she wouldn't have much to say to a cultivator she had just met. Seeing this, when Ziren and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh out loud, "Don't think too much, just focus on your cultivation and wait for Beichen to return." Di Beichen didn't return to the house until it was late at night. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two couldn't help but stop cultivating and look at Di Beichen. "Beichen, you're finally back. You took a really long time to eat this meal." Seeing that Di Beichen had returned, Ziren couldn't help but tease him. However, Di Beichen didn't answer when Ziren's words. Instead, he walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Di Beichen's serious expression, and her expression couldn't help but change a little. She took the initiative to ask, "What happened?" "Wife, I have news to tell you," Di Beichen said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her pretty face was quietly covered with a touch of seriousness. Many thoughts instantly appeared in her mind. Could it be that Di Baichen and Di Yujue talked about the tears of glacial flame and Di Yujue directly gave an impossible answer, cutting off all their hopes? What news? When she said this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't notice the nervousness in her expression. We will have the tears of glacial flame very soon. Di Baichen slowly said. Chapter 3277. The room fell into silence for a moment. Bailey Hongzhuang, Wen Ziran, Shangguan Yingying, and the three beasts all looked at Di Baichen with dull eyes. Their minds seemed to be unable to turn around for a moment, and they only thought that they had heard wrong. You. What did you say? Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask. In that instant, she felt that she might have heard wrongly. Her voice was filled with uncertainty. I said, we will soon have the tears of frost fire. Di Baichen's face broke into a radiant smile. In that instant it was as if the dark clouds had dispersed and the sun had shone upon the earth. It was filled with warmth and dispersed the gloominess in everyone's hearts. Is what you said true? Even though she had already heard it twice and was certain that she had not heard wrongly, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but emphasize it again. This was because this surprise had come too suddenly. It was so sudden that it was hard to believe. Di Baichen did not find Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction strange. In fact, when he heard Di Yujue say that he would give the tears of frost fire to him, he could not help but ask again and again. That's right, it's true. Following Di Baichen's words, the atmosphere in the room froze for a moment. However, in the next second, it completely exploded. How can this be? Did the person you met agree to give us the tears of frost fire? What kind of request did he make? Why would he give us the tears of frost fire? Then when will he give us the tears of frost fire? Will he change his mind? How did you all discuss it? In an instant, Bailey Hongzhuang, Wen Ziran, Shangguan Yingying and the three beasts all spoke at once. This was a great news to them and they were extremely curious about the process. Previously, when Di Baichen left, they felt that this was their only hope of obtaining the tears of frost fire. However, based on their understanding of Di Baichen, they thought that Di Baichen would not take the initiative to mention this matter. Hence, they did not have any hope. However, now that Di Baichen had returned and given them such a huge surprise, how could they not be surprised? Di Baichen looked at everyone's questions and did not know where to start. However, he could feel everyone's deep surprise and concern. He could not help but feel a wave of warmth in his heart. You all have so many questions. Which one do you want me to answer first? Di Baichen asked with a smile. Ziran waved his hand and said, forget it, we might as well not ask. You can just tell us the entire process. When he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying could not help but laugh. Di Baichen had been away for so long this time. If he wanted to tell them everything, how long would it take? However, if Di Baichen was willing to tell them, they would be more than happy to listen. The friend I met is called Di Yujue. Coincidentally, he has the same surname as me. Di Baichen smiled faintly. He asked me if I had taken a fancy to anything at the auction and I told him about the tears of frost fire. In the end, he decided to give me the tears of frost fire. That's how it happened. That's it. Chapter 3278. Not only did Wen Ziran have this feeling, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying also had the same feeling. Previously, in order to obtain the tears of frigid heat, the road ahead was really difficult. They had almost exhausted all the methods they could think of, but the final result was still hopeless. According to their judgment, it should be very difficult to obtain the tears of frigid heat no matter what. After all, the Golden Flame auction house had always shown such an attitude, but Di Baichen only had a meal with the other party and easily obtained the tears of frigid heat. Wasn't this too unbelievable? Di Baichen nodded, his eyes clear and calm. Yes, that's right. I'm also speechless. Didn't the Golden Flame auction house say that the tears of frigid heat can't be sold? Even Steward Qin was rejected. You only went over for a while and already got the tears of frigid heat. I'm really convinced. When Ziren couldn't help but give Di Baichen a thumbs up, but the smile on his face was getting wider and wider. This was really good news for them. Shengguan Yingying also gave Di Baichen a thumbs up. Baichen, you're the one who really hit it well. I was wondering why you suddenly met such a person. It turns out that all of this was a trick. They had worked so hard to solve the problem that they couldn't solve, but Di Baichen just met a friend and solved it. How could they not be happy? Bailey Hongzhuang's face was always full of smiles. After hearing the news that Di Baichen brought back, she felt relaxed. After coming to Penglai Island for so long, her spirit had always been tense. Now, she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Listening to the banter between Ziren and Shengguan Yingying, Di Baichen couldn't help but chuckle. When I met Di Yujue, I really didn't think so. When he mentioned it today, I also found it hard to believe. Looks like Baichen, you're truly blessed by the heavens. We've prepared for so long, but we didn't expect that in the end, there would be a light at the end of the tunnel. It didn't take any effort at all. Bailey Hongzhuang had a big smile on her face. This feeling of being suddenly enlightened was really delightful. Di Baichen nodded with a faint smile. Di Yujue is probably my benefactor. If it wasn't for Di Yujue's appearance, they didn't know when they would be able to resolve this situation. We really have to thank him this time. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were also shining with gratitude. Di Yujue's gift was tantamount to saving Di Baichen's life. This life-saving grace was enough for them to remember for the rest of their lives. By the way, Baichen, did he say when he would give you the tears of glacial flame? Ziren couldn't help but ask. He wasn't doubting Di Yujue's credibility. It was just that as long as this thing wasn't in his hands, he was still a little worried. What's more, with Di Baichen's current situation, it would be great if he could solve the problem of his physique a day earlier. If there's no accident, he should send the tears of glacial flame tomorrow. Di Baichen said slowly. He remembered that before Di Yujue left, he had specially said that he would arrange for someone to send the tears of glacial flame tomorrow. Chapter 3279. After returning to the Golden Flame auction house, Di Yujue quickly passed down the news and ordered people to deliver the tears of frostfire to Di Baichen the next morning. When Manager Jean heard Di Yujue's order, he couldn't help but be stunned. Previously, Di Lao had done so many things, but he still couldn't sell the tears of frostfire. Now, Di Yujue actually said that he wanted to give the tears of frostfire to Di Baichen. This was too unexpected. However, Manager Jean didn't dare to neglect Di Yujue's order. Di Yujue was Di Lao's master, so he was completely his god. No matter what Di Yujue said, he had to complete it immediately. However, after arranging this matter, Manager Jean still decided to tell Di Lao about this matter. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if Di Lao took the initiative to ask him about it in the future. After Di Lao found out about this matter, he was very surprised in his heart. However, he didn't say anything and just let Manager Jean do it. As long as it was Di Yujue's order, he never asked for the reason and only followed it. The next day, not long after Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three left their cultivation, there was a series of knocks on the door. As soon as the door was opened, everyone saw a figure that surprised them. This person was none other than Golden Flame Auction House's Inya. May I ask which one of you is young Master Di? Inya asked with a smile. I am. Hearing this, the smile on Inya's face widened and she said, "Young Master D, my master asked me to deliver the tears of frost fire." In the next second, a brocade box appeared in Inya's hand and she directly handed it to Di Baichen. Di Baichen took the brocade box and opened it to see a crystal-clear tears of frost fire inside, emitting an alluring fragrance. When they saw the tears of frosty flame, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's eyes lit up. Even though they already knew that Di Yujue would send someone to deliver the tears of frosty flame, they could not help but feel excited when they saw it with their own eyes. "Young Master D, you can check it. If there's no problem, I'll take my leave first." Inya always had a faint smile on her face. When she received this task, she was very surprised. The treasure that was auctioned off at a sky-high price was now given to a young cultivator by her mistress. She was really curious about who this cultivator was. "Please help me convey my thanks." "I will." After Inya left, Di Baichen closed the door. Then, the four of them looked at each other and laughed. Their laughter gradually spread, and everyone felt relaxed. Baichen, Golden Flame Auction House actually sent Inya to deliver the item. It shows how important you are to Di Yujue. Although they did not know much about Golden Flame Auction House, they knew that as the auctioneer of Golden Flame Auction House's large-scale auctions, Inya's status was definitely not low. Di Baichen's eyes gradually changed. He was very clear about this point. They were just strangers who met by chance, but Di Yujue actually helped him. He only hoped that he would have the opportunity to repay Di Yujue in the future. However, it was obvious that with his current strength, he could not help Di Yujue in any way. Chapter 3280. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, "I will start concocting the medicine to change the cursed body in a moment. If there are no problems in the process, then it can be changed." In her previous life, she had spent a lot of time researching the method to remove the cursed body. However, the final result was still very satisfying. She believed that as long as she could successfully concoct this pill, then all the problems would be solved. That's great. As long as the problem with Baichen's body is solved, we can relax in the future. Shengguan Yingying could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Ever since they arrived at Penglai Island, they had always felt a sense of urgency. Because they did not know when Di Baichen would fall into a coma, they had always been in a race against time. As long as Di Baichen could keep his life, then there were many things that they did not need to be so anxious about. Everything could be carried out in an orderly manner, and they did not need to worry about any uncertainties that might arise at any time. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly, "That's right. You guys go and rest first. I will go into the chaos ring to concoct the pill. There will be no one to disturb me there." "Alright, then you have to work hard." Shengguan Yingying smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently, then turned around and was about to enter the chaos ring. However, just as she was about to enter, Di Baichen grabbed her hand. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look surprised. She looked suspiciously at Di Baichen and raised her eyebrows, asking silently, "Don't give yourself too much pressure." Di Baichen gazed at Bailey Hongzhuang, his deep and handsome eyes were filled with tenderness and concern. "It's all right." He was very clear that no matter how powerful an alchemist was, there was still the possibility of failure when refining pills. Even if they gathered all the medicinal ingredients, there was no guarantee that there would be no problems during the process of refining pills. They were all confident in Bailey Hongzhuang's alchemy skills, but sometimes, being too confident was a burden for Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing Di Baichen's words, the corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly raised, and a bright light flashed in her eyes. "I understand." It was only after Bailey Hongzhuang entered the chaos ring that her expression turned serious. Gathering the medicinal ingredients was only the first step, and refining the pill was also an extremely crucial step. The pressure in her heart was naturally not small. She knew very well that they only had this one chance. If they failed this time, it would be almost impossible for them to gather all the ingredients again. Even if it was possible, Di Baichen's physical condition would not allow them to have more time to gather all the ingredients. Therefore, she had to succeed in refining the pill this time. If she made a mistake, she could lose Di Baichen completely. Just thinking about this possibility made Bailey Hongzhuang feel a little suffocated. This pressure was not something that an average person could feel. She understood that even if she failed in refining the pill, Di Baichen would not care. However, if that happened, she would never be able to forgive herself. Sitting in front of the pill furnace, Bailey Hongzhuang did not immediately start refining the pill. Instead, she sat quietly and calmed her emotions. Chapter 3281. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, Di Baichen and Wen Xiren looked at each other. They weren't as calm as before. Right now, the most important thing was Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as this step was completed, everyone would be happy. If not, they would have to start all over again. Did my words just now give Hongzhuang too much pressure? Shangguan Yingying's face was full of guilt. She was so focused on the herbs that she had finally gathered, but she forgot that there was a certain risk in refining pills. Part of the reason for this was that she believed in Bailey Hongzhuang's alchemy skills too much. Wen Xiren glanced at Shangguan Yingying helplessly. His Yingying was good at everything, but she always spoke without thinking. She spoke without thinking clearly, so she often regretted it. It's okay, Di Baichen smiled, Hongzhuang knows that you didn't mean it that way. I really spoke too fast. Shangguan Yingying patted her head in annoyance, but I still believe that Hongzhuang will be able to refine it. She is the most powerful alchemist I have ever seen. Even an alchemist like Chu Feihu wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't refine this pill, then it would be even more impossible for others. When Xiren nodded, I also believe that Hongzhuang will be able to refine it. It took us so long to gather all the ingredients. God will definitely be on our side. The three of them looked at each other and smiled. However, no matter how confident they couldn't help but feel a trace of worry in their hearts. Everything was possible. Before the real result came out, none of them could be sure of the real answer. Therefore, they could only wait anxiously. Golden Flame Auction House. Di Yujue packed his things early in the morning and prepared to leave for the outside world. However, before he left, he still went to see Di Lao. Di Lao had watched him grow up since he was young. However, after that incident, Di Lao had stayed on Penglai Island and didn't return to his family. Di Yujue also thought highly of this old man who had always been loyal to him. Young master, are you preparing to leave today? Seeing that Di Yujue had come to say goodbye to him, Elder Di couldn't help but ask. That's right. There's no time to lose. I'd better confirm it as soon as possible. Hearing this, Elder Di nodded his head. You're right. This matter is of great importance. The earlier we go, the earlier we can confirm it. If it really is the young master, that would be great. I hope so. A glimmer of hope appeared in Di Yujue's eyes. He also hoped that his trip this time would not be in vain. Over the years, he had been disappointed many times, but each disappointment brought him great pain. This pain would continue to stack. Every time it happened, the pain would increase. If this continued, even Di Yujue's strong heart would not be able to bear it. Oh right, young master, I heard that you gave the tears of frigid frost to Di Baichen. Elder Di thought for a moment and asked the question in his heart. Di Yujue nodded, that's right. Is there a problem? No. Elder D waved his hand, I'm just curious as to why Di Beichen needs the tears of frigid frost. He asked for it for his wife. Di Yujue said indifferently. Hearing Di Yujue's answer, Elder D completely dispelled the guess in his heart. Chapter 3282. Elder D originally thought that Di Beichen was looking for the tears of frosty flame for himself. However, if he was looking for his wife, then no matter what the reason was, it had nothing to do with them. This was because they were looking for a man, not a woman. Di Yujue chatted with Elder D for a while before leaving. With Elder D in charge of the Golden Flame auction house, there was nothing to worry about. Chaos Ring. After Bailey Hongzhuang calmed herself down, she began to refine the pill wholeheartedly. Calmly, she threw away all distracting thoughts and completely released the pressure in her heart. She knew very well that the more nervous she was during the process of refining the pill, the greater the possibility of problems occurring. Therefore, she had to refine the pill with a calm heart. Otherwise, once she was distracted, it was very likely that the pill refinement would fail. After all, the level of this pill was not low. With her current alchemy skills, she was just barely able to refine it. Therefore, she could not do as she pleased as she usually did. Stalk after stalk of medicinal herbs were placed into the pill furnace by Bailey Hongzhuang. The entire chaos ring was silent. Other than the slight sound of the medicinal herbs being extracted, no other sounds could be heard. Bailey Hongzhuang's mental strength was constantly monitoring everything in the pill furnace. Fortunately, with the help of the profound ice fire, the difficulty of refining the pill was greatly reduced. Even so, the difficulty of refining the pill was still not small. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang entered the chaos ring to refine the pill, Di Beichen and the other two did not have the heart to cultivate properly. After all, this matter was of great importance. It was not easy to concentrate on it, and even meditate was not an easy thing to do. Therefore, the three of them simply gave up on cultivating and stayed in the room to wait for Bailey Hongzhuang's results. This wait lasted for a long time. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the chaos ring, Di Beichen and the other two's gazes almost immediately focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the three of them did not say anything. They only observed Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. If the refinement failed, they didn't want to give Bailey Hongzhuang more pressure and pain. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was expressionless. After noticing the cautious expressions of the three, she could not help but laugh. Her voice was filled with excitement. It's a success. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Di Beichen, Wen Ziren, and Shengguan Yingying couldn't help but stand up and cheer. Their youthful faces were brimming with joy. Hongzhuang, you're amazing. Shengguan Yingying took Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and jumped up. I knew you would be fine. The problem that we were most worried about has finally been solved. I no longer have to worry about you suddenly leaving us one day. Ziren patted Di Beichen's shoulder. His eyes were red. Back then, Di Beichen had suddenly collapsed and showed no signs of waking up even after using many methods. It had really shocked everyone. He had always treated Di Beichen as his own brother. He had always felt that this fellow was abnormally lucky and would definitely live longer than him. This was something that he could not accept. Now that he knew that he was finally safe and sound, he could finally relax. Chapter 3283. A single word of thanks contained all of Di Beichen's gratitude and affection. Men were not good at expressing their emotions, so it was fine as long as they understood. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shengguan Yingying could no longer hold back their tears. Too much pressure and tension had been completely released at this moment. We must not go home until we're drunk tonight. After his excitement, Xiren could not help but burst into laughter. It would be inappropriate if they did not celebrate such a good day. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others smiled and nodded when they heard Xiren's suggestion. Today was indeed an excellent day for them. That night, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally had a good night's sleep. This was the first time they had slept so well ever since Di Beichen's cursed body had acted up. They felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders and they slept very soundly. The next day, after a night's rest, Di Beichen's essence, energy, and spirit had recovered very well. He immediately entered the Chaos Ring with Bailey Hongzhuang. Since all the preparations had been completed, it was naturally best to resolve this hidden danger of his body as soon as possible. At the same time, they were also looking forward to seeing how different Di Beichen's body would be after the transformation. After entering the Chaos Ring, Bailey Hongzhuang handed the pill to Di Beichen and said, "I only have one experience of helping to transform the cursed body, so I can't guarantee that it's completely correct." Di Beichen nodded and smiled faintly, "I understand. According to my previous experience, you will feel an extremely great power after consuming this pill. It will feel as if your body is burning and it will be extremely painful. This process will definitely be extremely difficult because the transformation of the physique itself is a very difficult matter. Borrowing the power of the pill to completely transform your cursed physique will definitely be a complete transformation. You have to be mentally prepared." Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichen. Part of the reason why she had such a deep impression of the cursed body was because of the pain of the transformation. However, she believed that after enduring such pain, the transformation of a cultivator would definitely be earth-shattering. This pain may exceed your imagination. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but emphasize again. Di Beichen smiled when he saw how worried Bailey Hongzhuang was. He said, "Wife, don't worry. No matter what kind of pain it is, I can endure it." Compared to the pain of leaving Bailey Hongzhuang, what was any other pain? To Di Beichen, there was nothing more painful than leaving Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as he could stay by Bailey Hongzhuang's side, he could endure any kind of pain. Seeing how confident Di Beichen was, Bailey Hongzhuang recalled how Di Beichen had risked his life in the oceanic world. She knew very well that Di Beichen's willpower had always been extremely tenacious. Perhaps his concern had caused him to lose his mind. "Then we can begin now." Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile and her eyes became unusually determined. "Good luck." In the next moment, Di Beichen placed the pill into his mouth without any hesitation. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. Di Beichen only felt a scorching power explode from his esophagus and spread all the way down. Wherever it passed, it seemed to bring with it a thick flame. His body felt as if it was burning. Chapter 3284. This was an extremely painful feeling. Di Beichen only felt a flame rising from his dantian, burning every inch of his blood, muscles, bones, and skin. He closed his eyes tightly, still persisting in operating the cultivation method, because he wanted to let this energy flow to every part of his body. Only in this way could he complete the real transformation. Bailey Hongzhuang saw Di Beichen's painful appearance not long after taking the pill, and couldn't help but have a trace of worry in her eyes. This pain was extremely terrifying when she saw that cultivator endure it. No matter how strong his willpower was, it would not be easy for him to endure it. In just a short time, Di Beichen's forehead was already oozing with large beads of sweat, and his face quickly turned pale due to the pain. He frowned, resisting the bursts of pain coming from his body. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but tightly intertwine her hands. Unfortunately, she couldn't help Di Beichen when he was enduring such pain. All of this could only be endured by Di Baichen himself. The more thoroughly this heat burned his body, the more powerful his body of heaven's will would be. This could be said to be a situation where danger and opportunity coexisted. As long as Di Baichen could hold on, it would be extremely beneficial to him. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly guarded Di Baichen's side. This was the only thing she could do. For Di Baichen at this moment, every minute and every second was extremely unbearable. He only felt that his blood was about to dry up under this heat, and his throat was so dry that it was about to smoke. However, he also found that when his blood boiled to a certain level, some new power would emerge from his body. If he guessed correctly, this should be the power of the body of heaven's will. Different from the power in his body, it was more clear and pure. This power had a faint coolness, like a clear spring in the heat. Although it was very little, it gave Di Baichen a chance to breathe. As the heat spread wider and wider, Di Baichen's pain became more and more intense. His face was as pale as paper, and his body was on the verge of collapsing. It was as if he didn't know when he would completely faint. However, Di Baichen still retained a trace of consciousness. He must not let himself faint. Once he fainted, all his efforts would be in vain. They had gone through untold hardships to reach this step, so how could they fail because of him? Therefore, Di Baichen bit his lips, and blood flowed out from between his teeth. The sweet taste of blood allowed him to maintain his consciousness. He could not disappoint his wife, because he wanted to always be by her side. In this kind of torture and pain, time gradually passed. Bailey Hongzhuang paid attention to Di Baichen's situation. She found that although Di Baichen's breath was extremely weak, it was still abnormally strong. This kind of time was not only a kind of torture for Di Baichen, but also for Bailey Hongzhuang. In the entire hall, only Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen were left, but neither of them made a sound. Di Baichen gritted his teeth and didn't let out a groan. Looking at Di Baichen like this, Bailey Hongzhuang's admiration for him grew even stronger. Chapter 3285. Di Baichen did not know how much time had passed. He only felt that he was on the verge of collapsing from the pain. Every time he found it hard to hold on, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice and smile would appear in his mind. Then, he would continue to persevere. It was as if his body no longer belonged to him. Under such perverted torment, his ability to endure pain seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. Unknowingly, a day and a night had passed. When the burning sensation in Di Baichen's body had completely dissipated, he could not help but open his eyes. He only smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang before he could no longer control himself and fainted. The moment Di Baichen fainted, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly rushed to Di Baichen's side and supported his collapsed body. After taking Di Baichen's pulse, Bailey Hongzhuang found that although Di Baichen's breathing was weak, his life was not in danger. He had only fainted due to excessive overdraft. He only needed to recuperate for a while to recover. However, after a careful examination, Bailey Hongzhuang also found that the power of the cursed body that had been suppressing Di Baichen's cultivation had quietly dissipated as if it had never existed. After confirming this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but cry with joy. Success! They had finally succeeded. The hidden danger of Di Baichen's cursed body had completely disappeared from today onwards. His body would no longer be a burden to his cultivation. On the contrary, the brand new mandate of heaven would help Di Baichen reach a higher peak. Even though the process was extremely painful, it was all worth it for this result. When Xiren and Shangguan Yingying had been waiting expectantly for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Baichen to come out. However, they still had some worries in their hearts. They had been silently praying that things would go smoothly and that there would be no problems. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang brought Di Baichen out, they saw that Di Baichen had already fallen into a coma. They could not help but be shocked. What's wrong with Beichen? Ziren quickly helped Bailey Hongzhuang place Di Beichen on the bed. He could not help but frown when he saw Di Beichen's pale face. Hongzhuang, is Beichen alright? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly with a relaxed smile on her face. It's alright. We succeeded. Beichen is just exhausted. He only needs to rest for 2 days. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, when Ziren and Shangguan Yingying finally relaxed. Their faces revealed a comfortable smile. We were scared to death. We thought that something had gone wrong. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. Shangguan Yingying patted her chest and breathed a sigh of relief. Bailey Hongzhuang also sat limply beside Di Beichen. She had not done anything for the past day and night. She had only been watching over Di Beichen. However, she still felt a sense of exhaustion. She had been too nervous. We can be completely relieved now. Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a bright smile. Even though her face was somewhat pale, her pair of black eyes were shining brightly. Ziren glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, "You've worked hard for the past 2 days. Yingying and I will go to the next room first. You and Beichen should rest well. Call us if you need anything." You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.